appreciate it. It's really good to be here. I've learned a lot already this morning. I hope to be able to add a little bit. But yeah, overall, I'm just really grateful to be here with all of you. It's wonderful to be able to come together with a bunch of like-minded individuals who are facing the same things. It's amazing how many questions or statements have been made where I'm sitting in the back and I see just a whole room of nodding heads. It's incredible. So I'm going to be talking about, so at GuideCX, we built a software dedicated to helping onboarding and implementation teams, helping make sure that they have something just for them that also works really well for customers, that doesn't require customers to log into some special tool. Anyway, I could talk about, it's like talking about one of my children. I could talk about it all day, but that's why my theme's going to be how to leverage onboarding for great long-term customer success. So a little get to know you, a little icebreaker here. 2 truths and a lie, and we'll do a raise of hands. So 2 of these are true, and 1 of these is a lie. So 1, and don't raise your hands yet, but 1, that I'm the father of 4 boys. 2, that I walked into the White House with the New York Yankees. And 3, that I went skydiving the day before my wedding. So raise your hand if you think that number 1 is a lie. Okay, all right. I look very young, I guess. That's how I choose to interpret you thinking that's a lie. 2, who thinks it's a lie that I walked in the White House with the New York Yankees? And 3, went skydiving the day before my wedding. Well, a lot of people here must know my wife. Yeah, she said that that was actually my last chance to go skydiving, was before we got married. And that's the lie. I did not take her up on that. And now, yeah, I'll never get the chance to experience it unless it's through VR or something like that. I do have 4 little boys. They're amazing. They're just the greatest thing in the world. Every day I come home, my oldest is 11 and my youngest is 3, and every day I come home, they are either yelling or wrestling or something. So it's a lot of fun. And my mother, I grew up in DC, and my mother worked at the White House. And when the Yankees won the World Series, and I was being babysat by a friend of ours who's in the Secret Service. And at the end of the day, I told my mom, I said, he's a great guy, but not a very good babysitter, because I just ended up kind of wandering off and then found my way with them walking up into the building. So makes for a fun memory. All right, so some things I want you to be able to take away after we're done talking here, and I'll try to leave some time for questions. 2 things you need to do at every touch point during onboarding. This is such a special moment that you have with your customers. It is such a special moment. I can't overstate that enough. You have a brand new customer that just went through a successful sales cycle. If you are working with the customer, they went through a successful sales cycle. They have hope. Every customer is born with hope. They are working with you in onboarding, hopeful that they are going to get some value. We talk a lot about value and customer success and defining value for the customer and learning what value means to them, not just what you think it is. But this moment is so precious. It's so important. It's your first impression, right? It's their first time through the door. So 2 things that you need to be doing at every touch point during onboarding that will make a huge difference. Also, on the other side, we're going to talk about the 2 worst mistakes you can make during onboarding. So hopefully and there will be no questions at that moment. I won't ask anyone to raise their hands. But yeah, you can take that back and see if there are any adjustments to make there. And we're going to start with this last one here. How big is the impact of effective onboarding on renewals? And why does it matter? And I think there's some intuitive things that we all know about why onboarding makes a big difference. But to start there, came across a study analyzing different reasons for churn, and 88% of those reasons were made up of these 5 things on the left. The other 12%, it's like 100 different reasons, so not categorizable for this study's purposes. But the leading cause was a poor onboarding experience. And if you think about that, I guess just intellectually it makes sense. If you have a rough first impression with somebody, your cognitive bias takes over, right? And you have this confirmation bias that, hey, the first experience we had with them was bad. It's probably still not good. If anyone's read the book, The Power of Moments, if you haven't, I highly recommend it. Very fun, good book to read, especially if you're involved in customer success. And there's a quote in there, our lives are measured in moments, and defining moments are the ones that endure in our memories. So it's no surprise that when a decision time comes around and I need to decide if I should be with you for another year or not, I'm thinking of the defining moment of my initial experience that I had with your team. And how well did they take care of me, and how quickly did I get to value, and how well did the experience align with my expectations, right? When we're talking about the onboarding experience, we're talking about more than just setup or more than just implementation. I think all those words could be interchanged. I don't want to get up here and be dogmatic about we have to say it this way. Everyone repeat after me. That's not my goal here. But the idea is to understand that my onboarding experience, if I'm your new customer, is more than just, okay, hey, we got you set up. Your team's in the system. Maybe even the system is integrated with what it needs to do. Okay, you're good to go. If you have any questions, let us know. Onboarding should be like an unboxing, right? If you've ever unboxed something from a company where it is like, whoa, they spent way too much money on this packaging. Is this what I paid for? Like, you almost want that reaction from your customers. So yeah, it's that whole experience that goes from the successful sales process that the customers just went through to the point where they are in long-term customer success. And I recognize sometimes the customer success team does the onboard. Actually, quick raise of hands. Anyone in here have a company where your customer success team does it all? They do onboarding? Okay, good. Yeah, decent amount. Wow, even more. Okay, so yeah, just for the purpose of what we're talking about, keep in mind, even if your customer success team does it all, we're talking about that initial from contract signature to the point where, okay, they have value. They're up and running, they understand it, and now we can move into really understanding their ROI and taking them further into our cycle. Something important for all of us to know is what happens in your brain during an onboarding experience, okay? I have looked into the brains of people during I'm just kidding. But there is some neuroscience behind what happens when you have purchased something but you don't have it yet, or when you're expecting something, or when you're waiting and anticipating for something. And a big thing that happens in your amygdala is kind of a fear center of your brain lights up. And in onboarding, especially in our worlds, we don't mean, obviously, fear, nobody's scared. But think of like kind of fear of the unknown, or just a bit of anxiety about what's going to happen next. Your customers, whether they know it or not, that's on their mind. Like, what should I be expecting now? Often they're asking your salespeople. And if you can't arm your salespeople with a great one-pager or an easy slide to explain what's going to happen in onboarding, then you are exacerbating this problem. And you need to be aware that it's happening in the brains of everyone who's going through an onboarding experience with you. They are wondering, or they are fearing what's going to happen next. Then the other part is in the kind of more the frontal cortex of value. And that you can think of as like, if you've ever had, have you ever bought something and then had buyer's remorse? That's kind of this value center of your brain making a judgment call on, am I getting out of this what I expected to get out of it? So the fear side is, hey, what's going to happen next, or what should be happening right now? And then the value side is, man, I just signed a contract for this thing. Where is it at? Like, my team's supposed to be using this. We're supposed to be like ChatGPT now, and we can just answer everything. So this is another big part of what's happening in your customers' brains that you need to be thinking about. And one thing that I think is just amazing from the 70s. So FedEx started in 71. In 78, their chairman and founder, Fred Smith, said this quote, and I think the only person who loves this quote in the world is me. It's like a very obscure quote from him, but I promise he said it. He said, the information about the package is just as important as the package itself. You may or may not know, but FedEx invented the tracking code system. Bless you. I'm sorry, I didn't say anything. And so founded in 71, in 78 he said this, and in 79 they started the first package tracking system. And does anyone know, does anyone shout out who FedEx was competing with? Yes, the United States government. Not an easy opponent in business to beat. But this idea that the information about the package is just as important as the package itself, it's like Fred understood what's happening in the brain of the people who have purchased something, but they don't have it yet. They're waiting for this thing. And then if you look at what that has done for B2C, like now Amazon takes a photo of my door with the package on it to prove to me that it's there. It's like, okay, easy. That maybe one step too far. But all these companies do it now, right? Like I don't get upset if my DoorDash is late because I see that there's traffic. Like, oh, well, I would have been in that same traffic, right? All of these systems now provide this transparency into the process. So the two things, now we're jumping back up to the first thing to learn. The two things that you have to do at every touch point during onboarding. The first is provide an antidote to fear. So look through your onboarding experience. Every time you interact with the customer, everything you do for the customer, ask yourself, in this moment, are we providing an antidote to fear? I'm not suggesting you have to provide an antidote at every moment, but you need to either be doing that or reinforcing value. So you've all built out, or if you haven't yet, you can start now. You've all built out like a customer journey, a map that you want your customers to go through, what you want them to experience. Remember, every customer is born with hope. So you've constructed this journey that should deliver on that for them. But the homework is to go back and look at all of those touch points you've created for them and ask yourself, does this either provide an antidote to fear or does this reinforce value? Does this help my customer feel a little more clear about what's happening? Okay, good. Or does this help my customer understand the value that they're going to get? Right? So some examples, like again in the B2C world, we ordered, again, 4 little boys. They wanted gloves with no fingers, cut off like biker gloves. Of course they did. So go onto Amazon, order them. And I have 4 boys. 3 of them ordered these gloves. 2 of them arrived very quickly. 1 was just not coming. And it's not coming and not coming. And eventually we get an email from Amazon saying, hey, this has been, this hasn't been delivered for a long time. Do you want us to just cancel the order? So for me as a consumer, what an incredible antidote to fear. I'm not worried about what's going on. It even seems counterintuitive. It's almost like asking your customer in advance if they should contract, right? Which is amazing advice. Like the transparency of, hey, we've got your back here. You're okay with us. We're aware of what's going on. And then a reinforcement of value, as you're working with your customers and now to bring it into your world and our world in onboarding new customers, are you helping them understand why they're going through what they're going through? Why it matters that you're asking for this specific thing in this specific way? Often we take for granted, I guess let me say, don't take for granted that it's their first time. For you, it's your 100th time. Maybe it's your 100th time that day. But it's their first time. They're born with hope. That's why they bought your service. Don't brush over the amazing value that they can unlock if they do A, B, or C, whatever it is that you're maybe pleading with them to do. So go through your whole journey, see what parts provide an antidote to fear, what parts provide a reinforcement of value. If you find a spot that's not doing either, you have to make an adjustment. You either need to infuse it with one of these or you need to reconsider why you're doing that at all. Okay, so 4 steps you can take along that process. 1, you should regularly go through the experience yourself. It's going to take a little bit of effort, but I highly recommend it because you will uncover golden nuggets that are so obvious only if you go through the experience. They will not be obvious at all just intellectually, just talking through the experience. I know every one of you knows what your onboarding experience looks like, but you probably don't know how it feels. So do it once a quarter, do it once every 6 months, do it once a year if that's all you can manage. That's okay, but just make sure that you are going through the experience yourself. And I would recommend going through it from start to finish. Start being from that handoff from sales to the onboarding experience, and then again, the finish being the handoff from the onboarding experience into the customer success kind of long-term experience. And if your CSM team does the whole thing, that's fine, but just still track through that whole process so you can see what that looks like. Then we'll talk a little bit about automating communication. There's some great things you can do to make sure that people are kept in the know. Forecasting risks. This is really important. Make sure that people, again, to use the package tracking analogy, I want to know if it's not going to arrive by Tuesday. You said it was going to arrive by Tuesday. Maybe I purchased it because it was going to arrive by Tuesday because I need it for Tuesday night or I need it for Wednesday morning or whatever. So I'm not going to explode unless I don't know until Wednesday morning, right? Tell me ahead of time. And then measuring efficiency. There's a lot of data that you can look at to make sure that you're providing a good experience across the board. So I won't read through all of this. This is for you to kind of digest a little bit, but it really matters to go through your own experience just because of how big of an impact experience has on customer sentiment. Earlier, some great insights were shared. Oh man, I forget who shared it. I apologize. But around the pain of a detractor and how that can essentially prevent you from 7 new customers. In this day and age, and something that I've heard that kind of couples with that is that detractors also, unfortunately, tend to be a lot louder. And a lot of that comes from the experience you provide. Just the way that you make people feel during that experience. So again, I know that you know what your onboarding experience looks like, but you probably don't know what it feels like. So go through it, make sure that you understand it really well from the customer standpoint. You want to make it simple, easy, intuitive. It's just that, there's too much at stake when an experience isn't right. I heard a customer, this is actually a customer of one of our customers. This is not a brag. This is something I heard. This customer of our customer said, hey, that experience that we went through with that company, that onboarding experience, was so, we're always paying, the implementation costs when we buy a new software because that's just part of the deal. They were like, this one, our whole team looked at each other unanimously and said, that was worth every dollar we paid. That really helped. And I think you only get that when you go through the experience, when you understand exactly what it's like. Okay, automated communication. Again, the one thing that gets said a lot at our company, so our founder, who actually I'll show at the end, so Peter and Nick Mehta, Gainsight's CEO, are doing a webinar next Thursday that you all can attend, learn a lot of great things from both of them. But one of the things that he says that I love is the best companies in the world do things so people don't have to call them. Not so that they can't call you, but so they don't have to. So they don't feel compelled to say, okay, just get me somebody on the phone. What's going on over there at that company? They do things proactively to make sure people are aware of what's happening. One thing that is very valuable in onboarding is not only the status update of, hey, where are we in this process, but also the forecast of when we should be going live. And if you can deliver that consistently, you will alleviate a lot of anxiety. Yeah, that's a huge antidote to fear of just, hey, just so everybody knows, here are the tasks that are outstanding, here's who's assigned to them, here are the things that are stuck, here are the things that need to be worked on next, and this is the forecast for what's happening next. If you can automate all of that, all the better, right? Then you're getting a little bit closer to that creepy photo on the doorstep. Your package is here. But yeah, the more you can do, and then I guess one little nod I want to make on this is just the theme of doing more with less. We've talked about that a lot today. I know a lot of us are facing those challenges. If I could speak to I guess the human side of the people responsible for onboarding your new customers, the more you can automate for them that is valuable, the more they can breathe. They have a lot on their plate. If you can help, there are some things that a computer can do that a human doesn't have to do, right? If you've got a system, like in our system, you've got all your tasks, you've got all your stakeholders, all the people who need to be involved, you know what's late, you know what's early, you know when it should finish. If the system can proactively send that note out to everyone every Monday at 9 or every Friday at 5 or whatever you want it to be, think about what that does for your team morale, and also for their ability to be able to work with the customer on higher level issues. The data that was shared earlier this morning around just how much like follow-up work is done and then only 10% of time is spent on those strategic initiatives. The more you can do here, the happier your teams will be, and the more you'll get out of them to be able to do more with less. And again, I guess just a quick nod, and I'll skip through this, but think about what that did for the B2C kind of customer experience revolution. Like now I don't have to call, Domino's is one I didn't put up here, Pizza Hut instead, but right, they're updating you every few minutes about what's happening with your pizza and exactly what number pepperoni just got put on. Don't panic when it comes to risk. Your customers should not expect perfection, but they should expect transparency with what's happening, right? There's no such thing as a perfect experience, but you get really close when you're very clear about what's happening and what you expect to do. John Dewar, I think this is his second time getting quoted today, so good for him. He says in the book Measure What Matters, talks about how transparency seeds collaboration. I love that. One big difference between generic project management and customer onboarding is that project management in general is used across a ton of different disciplines, and it's an important practice to help make sure that we manage projects and tasks and people effectively. The focus in customer onboarding is engagement. You are trying to engage your partner, your new customer, to get them to value, right? You're trying to keep them engaged. Often you're working with a team that just heard that they bought your software, right? A lot of head nods. That is not always the easiest way to start. So it's your job to develop something, an experience in onboarding that is engaging for them. And nothing is as engaging as being transparent about what's happening, making sure they understand along the way if there are risks coming up, that they're clear about what those are, and that they can adjust them. Very frustrating when you get on a call with a customer and they say, "Oh, I didn't know you were waiting on this from us. I can get that sent over to you right now." Meanwhile, your team has been telling you for 2 weeks that you're waiting on this, and they don't know why. They just can't get it from the customer. So there's a transparency, there's an engagement problem there. This is the last thing, the 2 things to never do during onboarding. These are the 2 things. So we talked about 2 things that you have to do at every touch point. We talked about the impact of great onboarding experience on renewals, potentially reducing your churn by up to 22%. These are the 2 things to never do. Do not overwhelm somebody. Every customer is born with hope. They're thirsty to fulfill that hope. This guy on the left is getting real wet, but not getting a drink. Being totally overwhelmed. And that poor boy turning on the fire hydrant is probably so excited as you are. Your software is the best thing in the world. And that's why they bought it. And you have 100 different amazing ways that it can be used, and you really want to tell them about all of them right now, because in fact, you just had an experience yesterday with this piece, and oh my goodness, one more thing over here, because this has really helped this other customer, and you can just get going and going with the best intentions, but then leave your customer saying, oh my goodness, I think it sounds great, but I don't know how I'm ever going to have time to do this. They have a full day job, so do not overwhelm them. And then do not go dark. Make sure that they know what's happening. The worst thing that can happen for a customer is, yeah, we haven't heard from them. And you may be working very hard on your side, but they need to know what's happening, going back to that forecasting risk. And then a final note on just measuring efficiency, and I'll leave this slide with you, but essentially you should be aware of how long this is taking, who on your team is taking the longest, layer in the customer satisfaction scores so you know that they're not just going fast for fast's sake. And then how much is this costing you? If you don't know what your onboarding is costing you, it's really hard for you to make good decisions for the business long term about how to make adjustments during that process. And then when you go through the process yourself, you can actually see the points with your business hat on of like, oh, this is what cost us the most and it delivered very little value to me, role playing as the customer. So make sure that your data is not just like a rocking chair where it gives you something to do but doesn't get you anywhere. Like, use those levers to improve that process for your customers. Because all of those little things are like a spark that leads to a bonfire. Like this onboarding experience is so crucial at that beginning stage because it should lead to this huge partnership over many, many years. But if you don't get that right, then you miss a big opportunity. There's plenty more to talk about that you can come by our booth, but I do want to leave a few minutes for questions here. So I'll leave this slide up. You can scan that QR code to register for the webinar. It's with the Customer Success Collective that Nick and Pete are putting on. But yeah, any questions from anybody?
Any comments?
Experiencing it yourself is so key.
Yeah.
I'm actually a customer of my company,
Yeah.
so I experience it on a
Okay. It is key. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about, can you speak to like preventing microaggressions with your customers during onboarding? You're asking them to do a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of steps. I know we talked about avoiding overwhelm,
Yep.
making sure that they see the value, but when you have that onboarding process where there are a lot of steps, sometimes that folks can say, oh, I don't have time to do this, and especially if they're not the decision maker on the platform and it's something that they were given, like, hey, we purchased this. So is there any advice as to avoiding those microaggressions?
Yeah, I don't know that there's a silver bullet, and if anybody else has had anything that has worked successfully. For me, it comes back to transparency. If somebody's telling me they don't have any time to do the thing that is critical that needs to be done, I'd just be transparent with them and say, yikes, like I'm very sorry to hear that. I'll just make sure that everybody at least knows so that we can set a realistic expectation. Because you may get somebody who's like, no, it's not that I can do it next week. I can never do this. In which case, make sure that the other stakeholders know, make sure that their leadership knows. And then I would say with the two things you got to do at every touch point, like provide a reinforcement of the value of what that offers. It could be that they don't understand what they're going to get out of that it's just busy work to them and they've got a full-time job and implementing your software is not their full-time job. So if you can tee it up with, here's why we're doing this, here's what you're going to be able to unlock, here's the value that you were hoping for, and it's right behind this door of you doing this work, that can help. But then again, if you can be transparent with the whole group about, hey, Larry's not able to get to this. If there's somebody else who can, that's great. Otherwise, we'll be in limbo here until we can move forward, just to make sure everyone's on the same page so there are no surprises. Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir?
How do you manage customers when you're in that aggravated situation and they name drop a competition of you saying they do it, why don't you?
Yeah, that's always an amazing conversation, right? I mean, you just bought my software and now you're talking to me about somebody else. I'm sure that doesn't happen to Microsoft, but yeah. I would go back to trying to reinforce value and trying to probably also, and I guess to be frank, if that happens that soon, you should probably default to asking more questions than being defensive. I think probably all of our natural posture, in fact, you just saw the thought process I went through. Your natural posture is to defend because your software is the greatest software in the world, and that's why they bought it, and the service you provide. But I would be asking questions. And if there's, we shouldn't be afraid of legitimate feedback and criticism. If there's something true to uncover there to improve about your process, you should be quick to say, wow, that is something that we could learn from, something we could improve on. I'll improve, I'll start right away on that. But then, yeah, if there's anything you can build in to reinforce the value of why they bought, hey, this is what we heard from the team. Are these things still relevant to you? This is the value that you're going to get from being able to implement this. Should help. But then also, I think I'd probably flag that risk to the rest of the team. Make sure they're aware that on day 2 they were talking about your ex. What else? Any other questions? Okay. Oh, no. Did you have a question? No. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Excellent.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Eric.
it.